let's start, Anthony, with the Michigan offense in this game, what we kind of expect from them. And we've mentioned it. So Nebraska ranks number 1 nationally, according to one site, number 2 nationally, according to another site, behind James Madison in, I believe, their second year in the FBS. But I digress. In rushing defense, Michigan wants to play, a similar way to Nebraska. And I think we talked about it on Monday, where Nebraska has kind of modeled the way they want to play: physical, run the ball, stop the run. They've kind of modeled that after a blueprint that Michigan has set and been really successful with under Jim Harbaugh, especially in the most recent years. But they're going to want to stop the run here. Michigan's going to want to run the football with Blake Corum, who has really played well against Nebraska in the past, but this under Matt Rule, a little bit of a different look. 3-3-5 defense under Tony White, who was at Syracuse the last 3 years, Arizona State before that. We know the odd fronts have given Michigan a little bit of trouble. It's just a different look you don't see in the Big Ten all that much. But they have faced them a little bit more, I think a couple times in the non-conference and then obviously in the Fiesta Bowl. So it won't be the craziest thing in the world for them to have to, or had to, prepare for that all week long. But I like a couple things. One, the way Michigan has used the play action game, I think they need to use it more, especially in a game like this when the other team is going to be really intent on stopping the run and really good at stopping the run. And then 2, using J.J. McCarthy in the run game when everyone's going to be keying in on Blake Corum. They're all going to be crashing in on him. We saw it last week. 5 of his non-sack carries go for 51 yards, a few of them design runs, a couple of them on 3rd down and short, and then 1 on 4th. And I think 1 or 2, but from their own 36, which really allowed them to stay on that huge drive that went for 8 minutes. Him in the run game, as long as he gets out of bounds and gets down, it's tougher when it's really loud and you don't have all your senses there 100% when you're on offense. So you don't want him to take a big hit, but I think that could be key in this game as well. We'll talk about it in a second, but Nebraska is going to run their quarterback, Heinrich Harbaugh. Michigan may have to run their quarterback as well.
We're getting to a point now where teams loading up to stop the run is just going to be, it's going to have to be something that they get used to seeing. And they've seen it for 4 weeks now. And, people will lament the downfall of Michigan's run game, but at some point too, you're going to have to be able, and this is why you put a drill like the Beat Georgia drill in there, is being able to run the football and physically dominate when everyone in the building knows what's coming. So I do expect Michigan's run game to be efficient. Maybe Trevor Keegan said earlier this week, maybe the days of running for 300 or 400 yards in a game are over given the new clock rules. But, I look to, when I look at, offense versus defense in this game, I look to last year's game about this time of year at Iowa as maybe the blueprint for what I would like this thing to look like. You were able to go into Iowa. You ran the ball 42 times for 172 yards. Blake Corum had a big game. You had that 11-play, 75-yard drive right off the bat to kind of set the tone, which teams don't do that in Kinnick Stadium. And I think that's going to kind of be what this game has to look like on Saturday when Michigan goes to Nebraska. Now, again, if teams want to keep gearing up to stop the run, I say let them. JJ is, last week I thought, was as comfortable and as decisive as we've seen him making those reads and pulling the ball and running and getting out when nothing was available down the field. We need to see more of that. I think we will see more of that. The play action game, Colston, this is a week to see Colston Loveland and AJ Barner and maybe Donovan Edwards out of the backfield. I think that's where maybe his biggest impact is going to come right now, is catching the ball on some of those check downs and finding green grass for him to get up the field. But, for this Michigan offense, I think, given the way that I can see a path where Nebraska is going to try to run the heck out of the ball, using that option offense to their own benefit and grinding the clock down and limiting possessions. That's going to be what keeps a team like Nebraska in this game. But Michigan can counter that by going on long drives of its own, because if you do that and you're finishing with 6 points on the road, I just don't think that Nebraska will have enough possessions to kind of hang with you if you're taking care of your business in that regard. So keep taking what the defense gives you. I'm totally fine with that approach from the Michigan offense. And I know that possessions are down. Plays aren't really down that much. You want to see them get more of those explosives, but I don't know if this is going to be the week you see that. I do think this is more of a death by 1,000 paper cuts type of game for them.
Yeah, and you want to come out two things. You want to start fast in this game because with the limited plays, I mean, you don't want to fall behind and be that team that needs, we need 3 scores or, I don't think they're going to fall behind that much, but we need 2 scores to tie the game. It's like, well, okay, well, how many possessions are we going to have left? Maybe 4 in the second half or something like that. That's one thing. And then 2 is you're going to want to make a statement. Like they're going to try to stop the run, but Michigan has done that. And you brought up the Iowa game last year, which I think is a great point, that Michigan came out in that game making a statement that they didn't run all over Iowa, not by any stretch, but they did have some success moving the chains, playing, physical football down there. And I think they're going to want to make the statement as we talked about on Monday as well. Blake Corum's quote after last week's game of, they wanted to play bully ball. Well, we bully bullies. That's the mentality of this Michigan team still. So you can't fall in love with just doing that and fall into that trap of, not adjusting and not throwing the football when it's there and not using the play action and all that. But at the same time, this Michigan team is going to want to play its style of football as well in this game. A couple other notes on the Nebraska defense. They rank 103rd against the pass, 250 yards per game through the air that they allow. And then I did want to mention Luke Reimer, their starting middle linebacker, is questionable for this game, but he has been fantastic. He ranks 10th all time in Nebraska in tackles. He's in his 5th season, I believe, this year, and is off to a good year. They'll line him up on the line of scrimmage. They'll line him up right in the middle as well, and he's a key player. So one to watch as we get that injury report 2 hours before kickoff. Definitely one I'll be watching on the Nebraska side. Let's flip over to the other side of the football with Michigan's defense going up against the Nebraska offense, and they look different than they did the first couple of weeks with Jeff Sims back there. It's Heinrich Harbaugh, a kid who, and I was talking to Sean Callahan, who does a great job with Husker Online on our On3 network, and he was saying that the last coaching staff basically wrote off Heinrich Harbaugh. They didn't want anything to do with him as a quarterback. This kid is from Nebraska, homegrown product, comes in this year in replacement of Jeff Sims, who's been injured and obviously struggling in those first couple games, and has been great running the football, running the option for them, taking care of the football most of the time as well. He's 6'5". What is his weight here? Huge dude at 6'5", 215 pounds. You see him there, big arm. Isn't going to throw a lot, has not been all that accurate, but he does have a strong arm. They're going to run the ball at Michigan. Michigan's going to have to be disciplined going against the option. And that's why we'll see this in my article tomorrow. But Mikey Sainristil, to me, is a player to watch because he's going to be so key on keeping his responsibility out on the edge. But your thoughts on Michigan going up against the option? Jim Harbaugh grew up watching Michigan run the option with Rick Leach and all those guys. He ran some of the option while he was at Michigan. He said it's one of the greatest concepts in all of football. He definitely has an affinity for it with the way Bo Schembechler ran it. And you can tell he respects what Nebraska is doing, but it's going to be interesting to see Michigan go up against this style of football.
It will be. And it's one of those things where the option goes back to even back when they were playing with leather helmets. I mean, this is really football at its most, I know maybe barbaric's not the word, but this is it's pure football, like the purest, most disciplined type of football or most disciplined type of defense that you have to play is against that option. And as we're recording this now, early on Thursday afternoon, I just wrote about why the linebackers to me are the position group that I'll be watching super closely, especially, you have a guy in Nebraska's quarterback. He's 6'5", 215, 220, whatever it is. That's a big guy coming at you. We're talking maybe not quite the power of a tight end, but that's a big target. And you get that guy running with a full head of steam, they're gonna want to smack Michigan in the mouth. You're gonna see them bring tight ends downhill. You're gonna see them bring a fullback and all these guys downhill, and they're gonna try and out physical Michigan. And so much of defending the option is keeping your eyes on the football. Don't watch the quarterback. Don't watch, don't lock into a particular guy. You need to be focused and disciplined on where that football is. And now on the road, some would argue that on the road, that's maybe something where you can communicate a little bit better because the crowd is trying to stay quiet so the offense can get into high gear. But, I think if Michigan finds, and this is where, again, I think Junior Colson, Michael Bear, Ernest Hausman, former Nebraska Cornhusker,
making
Ernest
his return.
Hausman,
yeah.
making his return. All those guys are critical in this game because Nebraska is going to come out here and try to make this game competitive by punching them in the mouth. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see a couple drives early where they're able to kind of dictate that and punch Michigan in the mouth, because we haven't really seen those linebackers have been kept pretty clean this year because the defensive line's taking care of business. The defensive backfield is taking care of their business. But, this is where it's going to have to be, the immovable object up against, a freight train. And you're going to see collisions. You're going to see some violent old school style of football. Those guys are critical in that. Now, that doesn't mean the back 4 or 5 guys get to take the afternoon off. Like you said, Mike Sainristil is going to be key in that as well. And also something else we've seen, hearkening back to maybe that Iowa game last year, is that sometimes the linebackers, especially a guy like Junior Colson, can just not get quite as deep where they need to in coverage. And we've seen tight ends take advantage of that in the past. And we've seen that Nebraska has a good tight end in Thomas Fidone. But yeah, I think for me, it's all about eye discipline. It's about, in its purest form, as Jim Harbaugh likes to say, blocking and tackling. And that's where I think the linebackers are critical this week, as well as the defensive linemen. I mean, those guys have to win up front, but those linebackers to me are the group I'll be watching the most.
It's a good point. I think it's Fidone, but also you have me second guessing now. And I was just about to mention him too. They are going to throw the football a little bit, and Thomas Fidone has 3 straight games with the touchdown catch. They also have Billy Kemp, who transferred in. He has 13 catches, which leads their team. Shows you how low kind of those passing numbers are. They only have thrown 20.8 pass attempts per game. That ranks less than 100th in the country. I can't remember exactly, but they're tied 116th with 6 yards per pass. So they're going to want to run the ball. And then also Jeff Sims, I think, is getting healthier. I'm not sure if he's going to play some sort of role in this game. But Sean Callahan points out the stat to me as well, that they're 3 of 14 on passes of 20 plus yards in the air. And I think that's going to allow Michigan safeties or D-backs to play close to the line of scrimmage, play up there, knowing that it's either going to be a quick pass or they're going to be engaged early on in the run game, the option game. So yeah, just a couple things to watch there. And Nebraska has rushed for 200 or more yards in 3 straight games for the first time since 2018. So it shows you just how much success they're having on the ground. Anything else on the Michigan defense going into this game? I thought they've played lights out. They've allowed 7 points at most in any game this year, and this will be a test in a little bit of a different way. But I feel like if there's anything to feel confident about, it's that you're probably going to hold Nebraska to pretty low mark in this game as well.
Yeah, I would think so. And again, it's gonna be a test of your discipline, a test of your fortitude, so to speak. So yeah, excited to see that, because I think that will travel. That's the one thing that I'm most confident about this Michigan defense, is that they will continue to play lights out no matter the venue throughout the year. It's just a matter of those offensive guys holding up their end of the bargain.
Mm-hmm. And also when it comes to the Nebraska offense, I mentioned at the top of the show, but they have true freshman place kicker Tristan Alvano. He's 1 for 3. He made a 27-yarder. He missed a 41 last week, but it doesn't seem like they trust him a whole lot. So if it is tight, it's just going to be tougher, I think, for them to get some sort of points out of some of those drives that might stall out. We may see him go for some more 4th downs, that sort of thing. But this is a record-breaking high school kicker in Nebraska, and probably has a good career ahead of him, but he's a true freshman. And that's like if Michigan had Samaha going out there right now. It's a tough job.